Welcome back, everyone, to Into the River. Today, I have a guest that I reached out to on Instagram. I've followed your account. I'm not sure how I follow anyone. I just kind of find people through other people sharing, but I've been following you for a while. I only reach out to people I find interesting, and I really like your perspective and some of the things you share. There's always a lot of positivity and love. So I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So when did you start speaking out? I didn't go back in time. So have you always been outspoken on Instagram, or is that something that's
Not
kind of new?
yes and no. I like a short, just kind of like political thing for me. I was a woke leftist for quite a bit of time. When 2020 hit, was really kind of when my awakening started. It was slow, but gradually it came. And then about, I'd say probably 8 or 9 months ago is when I really started speaking out against the gender ideology and all that, because I started to see issues. As soon as they started talking about children transitioning, I was like, this is an issue. And so, yeah, so that's when I really started to speak out about it all.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us have a similar experience as far as the 2020. And I want to come back and ask about what your specific awakening was about, and also like the process of speaking out about the children, because that's something that got me very vocal as well. But first, would you mind just kind of telling us about yourself? You can start as young as you want, just kind of what your life has been like in your journey.
All right, sure. Well, obviously, my name is Mark, and I'm 40 right now. So that'll date some of the
I'm
stories that I'm telling in
40.
the typeface. Oh, sweet. Perfect. Yeah. So my story, I consider myself a transsexual man. Obviously, people in the community call it transgender. I choose to call myself transsexual because that is more of a medical term. The transgender community, to me, I don't align with a lot that's coming out of the community right now, so that's why I choose that name. So I knew when I was very young that something was wrong. I obviously had no idea I was trans. I didn't know any gay people. I didn't know any trans people. I grew up Christian conservative, so I grew up in a Christian conservative home. But there were signs, to me at least. When I was little, I know my parents do recall me saying that I thought I was supposed to be a boy. There were a few times that were mentioned. Of course, it was dismissed by them, and they're like, "No, you're a girl. You're going to grow up just fine. Don't worry about it." And so, I listened to them. I was just like, okay, no problem. So I didn't really have a lot of trouble through my childhood, like my young childhood at all. What really came to terms for me was when puberty hit. And really, I just thought I was a lesbian, to be honest, because what first started happening was when I was about 14. I started to notice an attraction to women, and only women. I did try to kind of date men in high school as try to date men in high school as like a I just thought that was the norm. That's something I was supposed to do. But I had never done anything sexually with men. I still haven't to this day. And so I just knew that that was an attraction that I had. So that's something I fought with myself for a few years, like from 14 to 16, because growing up Christian conservative, like we were the type of household that went to church 2 times a week. We were very involved in the church. So for me, that was kind of a hard reckoning to come to myself, because I was brought up to believe that being gay was wrong and it was a sin, and you shouldn't be this way. So for me, that was a hard reckoning. But when I turned 17, I got my first girlfriend in high school, and I decided to confide in my brother, because my brother's always been a little more liberal. So to give you context, my brother and sister are 7 to 8 years older than me. So he had always been a little more liberal, and I just was always closer with my brother and my dad. So I just felt my parents would probably have a harsh reaction, so I kind of wanted to see what my brother would say. So I talked to him about it, and he basically confirmed what I said, and just basically said, I don't think mom and dad are necessarily going to take this well, but you have to tell them.
Yeah.
And instead of allowing me to do it, he took the liberty to do it for me.
Mm.
So he outed me to my parents, and they found out, and
Were
they
you
immediately.
present when he did that?
No, I was not
Ugh.
present when he did it. Yeah, so it was like, yeah, it was definitely behind my back. I don't know when it happened, but my mom ended up confronting me about it, and my mom and my dad. We got into a huge argument, and I basically ran away from home that night. Um, Eventually, I went to my girlfriend's house. So eventually, my parents figured out where I was. They came to pick me up because I was still 17. They came to pick me up, took me to the mental hospital because they thought that would be the way to fix it. They thought I had a
Whoa.
mental disorder. Yes. So I was in there for almost 2 months at the age of 17. And it wasn't like conversion therapy. My parents did have my pastor come in and like for family therapy and like try to preach to me. So there was kind of like that aspect of it of like trying to preach the gay away, but it obviously didn't work. So that kind of happened with me. So then once I got out of the mental hospital, I basically left home. And then after that, in my early 20s, I fell into drugs and alcohol very bad. I just fell in with the wrong crowd and it turned into a mess, pretty mess of my life for a good 4 to 5 years. Um, and then finally, I got pretty much got my life together and met my current wife now. And I, um, I decided to transition at age 34, which is in 2017. But I was going to therapy for quite some time. Like, I actually started going to therapy, I want to say it was about 7 years before I transitioned. So I started going just to kind of deal with my own personal issues and personal trauma that I had gone through with my life, to work on things and, to try to get a better understanding of myself and to grow and to learn. And so as I was working through a lot of my issues, because I had depression and anxiety, OCD, and I have PTSD as well. I was working through a lot of those issues, and I would consistently work through those issues in therapy. And then, I would kind of have this mindset of like, this is it, right? Because one of the things I always say, like for me personally, is I've never felt like all growing up and all my life, I never felt like true peace within myself. Like I just never had that. So I kept thinking if I continue to work through therapy, right, if it, maybe these are the issues that are causing that. So I would keep like, figuring something out, getting somewhere, and then being like, this is it. Like I think I figured it out, and then a little time would pass and I would be like, I don't think that's it. So um, there were times throughout my life where I did think that I was supposed to be a boy. It did come up. There were times I thought about it on my own. There were many times I talked about it with my therapist, but it was something I would kind of like push away. We would talk about it a few times in session. This was over a course of years. We would talk about it a few times in session, and I would kind of just be like, I would actually talk to my therapist about, is this internalized homophobia? That's something I actually thought, do I just think because I grew up in a Christian home that it would be easier to be a boy because I'm same sex attracted? So, so that was something that I definitely dealt with a lot and talked to my therapist a lot. And I finally worked through like, no, that wasn't the issue. Um, and that wasn't what I was going through. So it was kind of like a yearly thing for me. It was like this yearly thing I would talk to my therapist about, and it would just be like, I don't know, like something I just don't feel right. And so eventually, through therapy and everything, I decided that I think I should medically transition. I think that is the best route for me because I do believe that for me, and I hate using this phrase right now because it's being thrown around a lot, but I didn't feel like I was born in the right body. My brain did not align with my body, is the best way I can describe it. So I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria when it was still considered a mental disorder. So I actually believe it is. I mean, there may be more to it, but I believe it is. I actually don't like that they took it out, to be honest.
Did they
Because
take it
to me,
out completely?
it's still in the DSM-5 for like to be able to prescribe the medication. However, it is not considered a mental disorder.
Okay.
Like actually, so nowadays, I don't know when that changed, but it was a couple of years ago. And so that's something too, is because like for me, when that I got that diagnosis, it was very much like, okay, this makes sense. Like this really makes sense for me and for who I am. So I came out first to my wife and to her sister because she was our best friend. And so I came out to the both of them and said, I think I want to transition. I think this is the course I'm going to take. I think I want to take hormones. I think I'm going to get top surgery. And that's where I plan to stop. And I think this is the plan. So my wife and I had a lot of conversation. She pushed back, not in a negative way, but just, are you sure this is what you want to do? In a very loving way. And I was like, yeah, I really think this is it. And so I decided at 34 to transition. I came out socially, um, came out as everybody does on Facebook. It was just easier, but I did write my family, because my family and I are fine now.
Okay.
Despite everything that's happened in the past, we are perfectly fine now. Everything's good. So I wrote them an email though, because for me, I've always been better with writing. So I wrote them all an email to tell them, because honestly, I was scared again. I mean,
Yeah.
having the trauma in my childhood of them rejecting me, because that's something I didn't add. But even though they had put me in the mental hospital when I left and left home, they just stoned me for 2 years. And we had a very strained relationship, my parents and my family, for 10 years total, because of the religious aspect of it. Eventually, they left the church we were in, and they're still religious, but they they found their own way through all of it. And it's not like they think I'm sinning or anything like that. They're perfectly okay with it now.
Good.
So but they had to kind of go through their own thing, and I think I had a lot of resentment too with them, which caused a lot of the distance as well. So yeah, but everything's good with them now. So when I wrote them all an email, basically everybody was fine. Honestly, I didn't have any like true pushback once I actually came out from anybody. None of my friends, nothing. I don't think I lost one friend. I don't think none of my family was, upset about it. They kind of all understood and said it made sense, because my mom had always said growing up, she would always say I had one of each, which meant I had a boy, a girl, and a tomboy, because I was a tomboy growing up. So she always used to say that, and it was funny because my brother's like, because the same thing. I did tell my brother first again, which scary to put myself in that situation, but it was just the first thing, and he's like, she won't care. He's like, It was so funny because it was a different reaction. He was like, I'm pretty sure she'll get it and she'll understand. So yeah, so it went well. It went well for me. I started hormones in 2017, and then I had top surgery in 2019, and then here I am now. No plans for like bottom surgery. I do plan to have hysterectomy, but I haven't had that yet, and that's my plan for now.
Wow. So I have so many questions. First of all, can you describe for the listeners who don't understand, like what dysphoria feels like?
Yeah. So for me, it very much feels like a disconnect from your brain to your body. So if I can describe it best, it's like if you're looking in a mirror. I always saw something. I never saw myself in the mirror. It just didn't seem right to me. I knew what I was seeing in my brain. Like I knew I was seeing like more of a masculine figure, but like I said, and then the words trans, none of that was around, so it's not like I had any idea that that's what it was. But for me, it was just a strong disconnect with, you know, just not feeling like a girl. I had a very strong aversion to my breasts when I was younger, and that actually came out when I was very young. And I kept telling my mom, like, when I get them, I'm going to cut them off. It was a common thing that I said very often, like even after puberty. So I had a very strong aversion to that, and it was just hard. Socially, it was hard sometimes because I wanted to hang out with the boys. I wanted to do more, I wanted to do things. And that's why I was closer with my brother and my dad. I would like build a lot of stuff with my dad and hang out with my dad and my brother. But, and my cousin too, he was also really close with me. And so I hung out with him a lot and his friends. So it was okay, but it was just like, I kept being told by the world, basically, or the way I grew up, that, well, you're just, okay, you're just a tomboy, you're just a masculine girl. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely a thing, and people can do that. But for me, it just didn't fit, throughout the course of my life. And so, yeah, like for me, there's honestly so many aspects to it, because dysphoria, like, I'll say this right now, like, as much as, and we can get into this a little later, but like, yes, this transition for me worked. It helped my mental health. It helps so many things, but the dysphoria never really goes away. It does get
Really?
better. For me, it didn't. Like, and for most of the transsexual people I talk to, it doesn't. And it's not that it's a common day to day. It's not like every day you have dysphoria. It's certain situations you might be in, or certain things that might happen that make you feel dysphoric in that moment. So it's not like growing up having constant anxiety, depression, and not knowing why, and all these different things. Like, I was able to go off my depression medication 2 years into my transition. I haven't had to take it since. So, I mean, I know that it's helped me in so many ways, but the dysphoria creeps up here and there, like in situational things. So, like if you gotta, like I'll say, like if you gotta use the men's bathroom in a public space, that for me is sometimes just dysphoric, just having to do it, just because it's just something like that. So there are some moments where you kind of feel a little uncomfortable throughout life, but it's not overwhelming anymore to the point where I couldn't, like, before my transition, I was crippled with anxiety. I could not leave my house. I mean, I had horrible social anxiety. I had really bad depression, and so now I am literally a completely different person than I was
Yeah.
before, and in a good way. But it saved me from so much heartache in my life, and I finally felt that peace in my life after I had top surgery. That's when I really, like, the beginning of the transition, and then in the 2 years that I took the hormones. Obviously, I started to feel a lot better. Things were good, but the minute I had top surgery, really, that was when I felt that inner peace within myself, and I was like, wow, this was it.
Yeah.
This really was it. And it's not like I didn't know that or question that. I knew that this was what I wanted to do. I was fully informed by my doctor. I had done so much research before I transitioned. I watched, even though back in 2017 there were barely any detransitioner stories, videos, anything like that, but I did watch everything I could because I wanted to make sure I was making the right choice. So yeah, so for me, like I said, it was for me a great choice. But like I said, dysphoria for me personally, it still comes occasionally, situationally. But as for growing up and stuff, it was crippling. It was mostly crippling anxiety, crippling depression, not knowing why I was socially awkward, or didn't want to be in certain social situations, and then being medicated for depression and anxiety, and it's still not working. Like, constantly having to work with a psychiatrist to change my medication to say, is this going to work? Is this going to work? So finally, when I transitioned, it really was, it really solidified things for me, because through the course of that, like I said, I was able to come off my depression medication. I do still take medication for anxiety. I'm open about that, but it's decreased the amount that I take. And my social anxiety is almost gone completely. I do just have general anxiety, but it's fine with the medication. So.
Wow. No, that's incredible. And I want more people to hear these stories because what's going on now is so different. It seems like everybody's trans, and I know that that's just not statistically correct. And so I feel like genuine trans people are getting lost in this whole movement. So I appreciate you sharing that. I had a question about your wife and I know you can't tell her story or speak for her, but to what degree you're comfortable. Is she lesbian or bi?
So she's always considered herself bisexual.
Okay. So for
Um,
her, what was
yeah,
that like? Like, because I'm just thinking in, the spouses or girlfriend or boyfriend stance of like the person you look at and fall in love with all of a sudden wants to go through a change. And obviously you love them at that point. So, but what's that been like for her? Obviously you said she pushed back
well,
a little, but
yeah, she absolutely did in the beginning, which I think, honestly, any spouse should, to be honest. I think nobody should just take that at face value, like they say nowadays. You should just say it, and everybody should accept it. No, I don't think that. But my wife and I have been together 15 years, almost 50, it'll be 15 years next month. So she's been with me for a very long time, and I transitioned long into our relationship, so it's not like she didn't have a reason to know me well enough to do
yeah.
that as well. So yeah, we had a long talks, and basically in the beginning she was she was kind of trepidatious about it. It was like, not that she said that she didn't accept me, she did, but she kind of said, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I hope that we will stay together. I hope, that this will work out, but I don't know how much you're going to change. I don't know. It's all the unknowns. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to be. I don't know how this is going to, affect me. But she still was on board and was my biggest cheerleader and was there with me through everything. But there were times, I mean, it's not like she didn't have a difficult time. There were definitely times I think she had a difficult time, and um, because there's this thing that a lot of people say in the community where, like, you're not supposed to. They say you shouldn't grieve the person that somebody is. I disagree with that because, like, you really do become, like, yeah, maybe at your core being you're the same person, but like for me, I'm a totally different person. So I don't like when people say I'm going to be the same person, because I'm like, no, hormones change, like the way your brain works. Hormones change everything. So it's like, no, you aren't going. And plus, people grow and change
Yeah.
themselves every so many years. So it's like, you can't sit there and say, I'm going to be the same person. So I know that she definitely had some struggles throughout that, but she did find some support groups to help her on Facebook
Really.
and stuff, to talk to some other spouses who were going through some stuff. And she found some really cool people that she was able to talk to. But yeah, I do know she had to grieve, like grieve the loss of me as her wife, because we actually got married the year before I transitioned.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so she had to grieve the loss of me as a woman, as somebody presenting that. But it kind of, it's a slow progression, I feel like, because the hormones don't change overnight. It doesn't change everything overnight. It takes time for things to change, for your brain to start changing, and honestly, everything changes. And I could go into that more, but, like, just like, even for me, like, your thought patterns change, the way that you handle certain situations,
Really.
that all
Yeah.
changes. Yes. And so um I think, like, one of the funniest things is that she always thought I was mad a lot in the beginning of my transition, and I think it was like the tone of my voice. It was actually something we fought about a lot, because in the beginning, because my tone would come across, and I think, like I said, it was because the deepening of the voice, and then, like, me not knowing how things were coming out necessarily, and that was something we dealt with a lot in the first couple of years of my transition. Um, so yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't speak fully for her experience, because there might be stuff she still hasn't even told me, that maybe she
Yeah.
talked to people. But I was glad that she had people to talk to herself.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was easy at all for her, especially in the beginning. I don't think it was easy. It's not. And it was when I before I transitioned, we had looked up and read. We were both reading a lot of stuff, and we read a lot of stories about people who are already in relationships when you transition. And at that time in 2017, statistically, almost everybody broke up. Like that the statistics, that's what it showed. So I think we were kind of worried about that, because it was like, wow, and we did find some stories where people stayed together, but I think it definitely worried both of us, but we definitely worked through it. And one thing I can say is, if anybody ever goes through this, the biggest thing is communication. Like,
Yeah.
we talked a lot, like, so much those first 3 years, just constantly about how we both were feeling, how each other was feeling. If you're doing this differently, you kind of have to reassess your life. And something she said to me when we were on vacation a couple of years ago, she kind of said, like, I think we have to reconnect as Marc, as
Mhm.
husband and wife, instead of as, like, wife and wife. That's a different dynamic. A lot of things change that people don't understand. Like I said, all aspects of your life change. We walk out on the street on the day to day, and people think we're a heterosexual couple, as opposed to being a gay couple. And growing up when I did that, it wasn't always okay to, like, be open about it. You were always worried about people saying stuff back in the 2000s and, like, stuff like that. So, it's just different. It's different altogether.
Yeah, I really love that you honored like her experience and that she was honest enough to tell you, well, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to be. I think that's right now we're hearing a lot of just affirm. And, bringing up the mourning thing is really powerful, I think, because for me, when I hear mourning the person you were, it's a part of the process of moving forward. And then that newness of getting to know, the new you, there are new elements. And I think that every relationship goes through those kinds of changes. Anyone who's been together for some time is going to get to know each other over and over and over again. Like, I know that my boyfriend and I have had that. Like, we're not even close to the same people we were. And, as I've gone through major transitions, he's gone through them. We haven't almost, like, there's times we almost split up because we were changing so drastically. So I think in any relationship, just being honest through that, but also acknowledging that, she was just as much a part of this experience and her world changed as well. I just think it's a beautiful story that you guys worked through that. And it sounds like you did your due diligence like crazy all along. So going back to the therapy, right now, as you know, it's very much, like I said, affirm immediately, and to the point where, therapists and physicians are afraid to even push back ever. It's just like, I think within 15-minute phone calls, you can get, a diagnosis. How do you feel looking back about the fact that you had that 7 years to kind of like process? It sounded like you started with mental stuff and just things you were working through before you even got close to considering transition. In hindsight, what could have been better, or what did you gain from that experience?
I think I gained a lot. And so that's why I'm a huge proponent for therapy prior to transition of adults. It's something that I've always pushed for, even when I was on the left. It was still something I pushed for. It's not like I was ever like, even when this affirmative thing came up, I was like, ugh, like, to me, affirmative therapy is not therapy. Like, therapy was created for pushback to be able to grow, even if you're going, let's say you take transition out of it. If you're just going for help, it's to talk to somebody. It's not to have them affirm everything you're saying. It's to have them talk through things with you, and that you need pushback to grow and to learn about yourself and about the things that you need to change and do to become a better person, or whatever you happen to be working on at that time. So for me, I think it was highly beneficial that I took that time to try to work through every other thing that could have been the answer. Because to me, I don't think transition should be the first choice. Like, I don't think that should be the first thing everybody's going to. And that's what it's turned into, is like, let's just, say they're trans immediately and get them on this path. And I'm like, no, like, for me, I feel like it was highly beneficial to go through each process and to say, okay, my depression, let's get down to the core of that. Let's try to figure that out. And it's not like I didn't help those things throughout the years of therapy. It just never got to a point of being, feeling fully okay, like, with myself, but it still got better. I constantly, I worked through my anxiety. I have PTSD, and that's from a sexual assault while I was a female. So that was another thing that I had to work through in therapy. So for me, I think it is essential to have therapy, and it's actually something I talk about a lot. And the transgender community, calls the certain things that I talk about gatekeeping laws, and I call them safekeeping laws, because I think that therapy should be a requirement, at least a 1 to 2 year requirement prior to transition. There are quite a few things that I think should be enacted that would help save adults who are being fooled or sucked into this gender ideology. Because to me, in the forefront, this gender ideology is crazy, and most of it is just expression. It's just expression of yourself, different ways to express yourself. It is not who you are. It is not who you are as a person. And it's like me. I don't live in my, being trans all the time. It's not something like, yes, do I do, I don't want to use the word activism so much, but I do speak out against the community and against things going on, because I think that that's important, but I do just think that therapy in general is so important, just for the general person that could be going through anything that they could be going through in life. So for me, I think that that's become a huge problem, where that therapists are now affirming, and I don't think that's the way it should be. I think therapists should, if you come in there and say, okay, I think I'm trans. Well, I think they should say, okay, well, why do you feel that way? And what could be all the other possible comorbidities you may have or other issues that you may have. And let's try to work through those, because transition isn't the ultimate choice. Like, it's not the cure all. I say this all the time. Like, transition is not a cure all. It's not going to save you from all your problems. I think it's essential to work through a majority of what you've gone through in your life prior to transition, because you're not going to feel whole, or you're not going to feel complete as a person if you didn't work through those issues anyway. So, like, let's say I didn't go to therapy for as long as I did and I transitioned. I still, because one of the questions, I'll throw this up, one of the questions I get a lot about the kids transitioning is, wouldn't you have benefited from transitioning as a child? And I always say no, because to me, I'm a firm believer in, you have to go through everything you're going through in your life to become the person you are. So for me, I just don't think that's possible, or it should have been a possibility, but for many different reasons. But it's just that I don't think that would have been right, because there were so many things that I needed to work through, and my life would have been totally different. It's like, I can't sit here and even theorize about what my life would have been, had
Yeah.
I been, presenting as a male my whole life. That would have been, who I always say, I probably would have grew up a misogynistic asshole. Like, who knows? I always say that. I have no idea. So it's like, I don't like to even, say that, because it's just like, I'm just, but yes, I think therapy is extremely, like, important.
Did
Extremely
you have
important.
the same therapist during that entire process?
Okay, yes and no.
Okay.
So I had the same therapist for the full 6 to 7 years there. And then when I actually decided to, like, transition and decide to go on hormones, she's my therapist that I was seeing, even though she was an LGBTQ friendly therapist, she had not been the type of person that would obviously diagnose or do anything with the gender dysphoria. Even though she was pretty sure I had it, she wasn't going to say I did. So she sent me to somebody else that could talk to me and,
Almost like to that
make,
next, someone more qualified in that area. That
yes,
sounds like she did I don't know, it's just so rare to hear good therapist stories, and it sounds like she did a really good job of that entire time, like, not, I don't know, just really paying attention to you and not like trying to press you in a direction, and then even admitting like, hey, this is out of my wheelhouse, like, and sending you to someone else for that final thing. It sounds like she was a great person at what she was
yes,
doing, which we're not
yes, she
seeing
was.
today.
No, we're not. And to be honest, like, I'll say, the gender therapist that she had me go see, like I said, I saw that other one for most of the time. And then she sent me to a gender specialist or a gender therapist. And, we talked, but she affirmed me by the third meeting. She was like, okay, yeah, you definitely have gender dysphoria. And and I know she did speak to my other therapist. They had conversations. So it's not like she couldn't have caught her up on everything going on by that time. But to me, even to me, that seemed a little quick, that she, like, looking back, that she diagnosed me that quick.
Yeah.
Now, do I understand if she had the full medical background, which she did? She had copies of that from my therapist. So I'm sure she did look through that, and that wasn't just her basis on that. But I always credit my first therapist the most with most of the work, because she did most of the work with me. The other one was really just to get me on the hormones. You need a
Yeah.
letter for that. There was a lot more requirements when I started. So there was a lot more safekeeping laws in place, which I think are important.
Yeah, the gender
When
the gender affirming therapists today remind me of like when I first moved to California years ago, and like I wanted to go get a medical marijuana card before it was just blatantly legal. It's literally like you just walk in and make up a diagnosis, and they're like, same day, here you go. Like, that's
Yeah,
pretty much what it feels like. It's like they're
no,
not
that
like, how
does.
are you
And
even a real doctor?
absolutely. No, I have the same experience here in Michigan. It's legal here now too, but I
Mhm.
had my medicinal marijuana card since 2016, and that's how it is. I mean, obviously, I had a
Yeah.
diagnosis of PTSD, but I'll tell you, it does feel like that, because my appointment with that doctor is a 15-minute appointment. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
what did
crazy.
you learn about me? Yeah.
So, no, exactly. So can you talk about some of the positive negatives effects of hormones for you? I know, like, there's so much information out there. I know I have talked to people who have been on them. and it's really worked for them. But like, I know, I don't know, but I'm watching someone right now who's coming off of them. I don't know if you know, in within the community, and it's being described as something really horrific, as he's sharing what it's like coming off and some of the health issues that he was having on them. So what are your experience or thoughts on hormones and how seriously they should be taken and all of that?
Well, for one, I think they should be taken at the utmost like security and importance. Like it truly does change your life. Like it changes every aspect of you. So hormones are extremely powerful, whether it's estrogen, and actually testosterone is even more of a powerful drug. Both powerful in themselves, but testosterone more so. So for me, I'll actually start with the negative side effects because I don't mind talking about them, and I think it's important that we do. So for me, I didn't really have many negative side effects within the first few I'd say a year or two of my transition. About 2 years in, prior to my transition, I didn't have the only thing I was diagnosed with was anxiety, and depression, right? And PTSD, OCD. I didn't have any other like physical problems. Okay. 2 years into my transition, high blood pressure. Boom. I'm on 3 blood pressure medications right now. It is regulated, but I'm on 3 blood pressure medications. My cholesterol, that my cholesterol started to go bad. That was about year 4 into my transition. Currently on medication for cholesterol. It's fine, but that's another medication that I have to take. Now, these are known side effects, but this is what happened to me. And I mean, they are known side effects on the informed consent when you sign them, but it doesn't happen to everybody. So I like to be honest about it, because like I said, going from having no blood pressure issues to having to be on 3 blood pressure medications. I mean, that's kind of crazy. So I like people to know that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a detriment to me. I think for me, the benefits outweigh the risks, but I can go up to that. But yeah, so I had the blood pressure issues, I had the cholesterol issues, and then also my red blood cell count increased. So now I have to give blood regularly. So I would either have to give blood or see a phlebotomist in order to keep my red blood cell counts in the correct levels. So I give blood regularly to do that. So those are probably the 3 biggest
Okay.
main side effects, and that or biggest side effects that I've had. And then obviously after top surgery, general surgery issues, I didn't really have much problem after surgery. I did have a seroma, which is I think it's a seroma. Yeah, it's a pocket of fluid that can build up underneath the surgical site. It's actually a very common possible side effect of a surgery. But I only had to have it drained once, and everything's fine. Everything healed fine, no problems, no issues. So yeah, I think negatively, that's probably it in the negative cast. But as for positives, obviously, as I've talked about before, it's severely helped my mental health. My mental health was really bad before this, before transitioning. I did attempt suicide in my early 20s. So depression was something that plagued me for a lot of my life. So those things got significantly better and pretty quick within the first year or so. I also lost a significant amount of weight, which I think is great. I think the testosterone
Really?
I think the testosterone just helped, up my metabolism. So I lost almost 80 pounds within 2.5 years of starting,
Okay.
which some people gain weight. So it's not necessarily common that people lose weight. So that was just something, and I didn't change my eating. It wasn't, I always try to tell people, it's not like I changed my diet. I didn't change my eating. It was just from hormones.
I wonder if part of that was being happier and like cortisol levels going down as well.
I definitely think that could have to
Yeah.
do with it for sure. Yeah. And then obviously it's just helped me feel at peace with
Yeah.
myself. I'm able to move day to day and not feel like that awkward, like something's missing. I always
Yeah.
felt like something was missing in my life. So I don't feel that way. It's easy, and which makes it easier to just move and generally be like, this is not something I would be doing pre-transition. I would never do an interview like this on a video or anything like that. This is totally different. So for me, it's just been positive. And it's brought me to a place of finally feeling at peace with myself. And for me and for most people, because everybody goes through life, and has issues in their life where they may not feel the best, or they may not feel at peace. But general men and women, just feel okay in their body. They feel a general peace with that, and I didn't. So for me to finally have that peace is just it's so amazing. It really
Yeah.
has changed my life in so many ways. It's brought me so many opportunities I never expected, and just things that I never would have even expected for myself. Because for me growing up, this was something I never thought would happen. I didn't,
Yeah.
like I said, I didn't know of any trans people. I didn't know of. I just thought that's impossible. That will never happen. That's not a thing. And so the fact that my life's come to where it is now, and just to be truly happy, I mean, is such an, like, I hate, like, it's such an understatement, but it's just so, for me, it's just, like I said, it's that inner peace that I just didn't have my whole life. So to finally have that is just amazing.
No, you can see it on your face, like the joy you're beaming, and that's beautiful. And why would anyone not want anyone to have that coming into themselves, experience that fulfillment of that thing missing? Like we all have it. We all have it on some level. And I think many of us, just humans, part of the whole experience is trying to fix and fill those places, and it's different in so many ways. So that to me is a success story, and it's really beautiful. This, I don't know, this is something I'm really curious about because I don't know what this feels like. What is it like to have the experience, because you're obviously passing, like there's no one, I would never, assume anything different than you're a man if I saw you. So what is it like to get to experience living the world through two different experiences? Because I can only speak to as a woman, and like so can you. And I've heard Buck Angel describe like how different it is. Like I think it's kind of rare and cool to have that. So is there anything
Yeah.
specific that stood out, like positive, negatives of either experience?
Well, I can say in a way I do feel very blessed. I feel like I
Mhm.
have a very unique experience because I've been able to experience both. And not that, I've only been in transition a little over 5 years now. So I've only had about, 5 years of really doing that. But I can tell you it is very different. So growing up socially and presenting as female, I was socialized as a female. So even today it's gotten easier to talk to men, to be around men. It's still, I'm still kind of, I don't always say I'm necessarily the awkward one in the room, but I'm definitely, you can tell because I do listen a lot more than men. Men typically explain and can talk over, and I'm more of the person that will sit there and kind of, listen. I also get myself into trouble because if I'm in a lot of like possibly toxic men's space, and they start saying stuff about women, I'll speak up about that. So, not that it's gotten me to like physical trouble, but I think I do. I will say for me, it's being 5 years into my transition now, it is kind of like an awkward territory to figure out. It's just like, learning how to socialize like this, and not that I don't have any problem, like you said, passing at all. So I do just have guys come up to me with like the normal guy talk, and like that was really weird in the beginning because I was just kind of like, it's not something you expect or not necessarily know how to react. And
Yeah.
then there's a lot of as a transsexual, there's a lot of like in talking where you're like, am I doing that right? Do they think that's going to be weird? Did I say something weird? You know, so that kind of happens a lot. But even now, I'm still navigating through the social aspect. I mean, because I found myself obviously well, actually, a lot of my closest friends are lesbians that I knew in high school. And that's something I actually typically bring up because I grew up with a group of girls, about 7 or 8 of us, and most of us were tomboys, played sports
Yeah.
together and stuff, and we're still friends to this day. But I was the only one that transitioned out of all of them, still to this day. So if this isn't a trend, so to say,
Right.
there's not groups of people. I always say like, well,
Yeah.
then statistically, at least me out of my group, it looks about right. So I'd be scared if we were all growing up today. But yeah, I mean, Yeah, I'm not sure. I kind of lost
No, I
what I
love
was
that.
saying.
That is a point that I never even considered. Like, as you know, you haven't been seen as a man in men's circles up until recently. I didn't even consider the fact that, men say things to other men that they don't say to women in their groups. And like, that's interesting, but I love that you're not trying to be other people. You're just being yourself, and you bring a unique experience because you do see the world from two different angles. And I love that.
Yeah, and so like growing up as a woman, it is a very different experience, and so I think that brings a different experience to now passing as a male. It isn't like I said, socially it is very different. It's easier for me right now, still to this day, to connect with women.
Yeah.
I think because I was socialized as a woman, so I either have a lot of women friends or I have other trans men friends, transsexual men or transsexual women, because I think we understand the experience, and so it's a little easier to at least connect on that level. You know what I mean? And we get the social, we're each biologically, either female or male, so still those social engagements. I've actually found it kind of easy to talk to transgender women, and I have a few close friends, transgender women, because I think that dynamic of kind of both switching socially, it's just easier to connect on a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one of the hardest things by far, is like just socially fitting back into the world. Not that it's difficult, but just navigating the ways that people talk, and how much guys don't talk about their feelings. They
Yeah.
don't. It's just rare to find guys who will really have like conversations about their feelings, and that's something I want to do. So
Yeah.
you know that's definitely hard, and there's just certain aspects about it, yeah, that can be difficult to navigate, but it's not hard, or it's not like this horrible thing that you have to deal with, but it definitely is something that I don't think a lot of people think about. It's just
Yeah.
like depending on how long you have lived your life as the yeah, as your biological sex, because for me that's 34 years of my life. So it's definitely used to being socialized that way. And then I can tell you like a really funny story. When one of my sisters, I'm sorry, one of my wife's sisters was getting married, and when they were having the bachelor and the bachelorette party, I wanted to go to the bachelorette party, right? Because I had been closest to my wife and her sisters and whatever, and they were like, not that her sister didn't want me there, but she was like, no, it's like it's a whole female thing, we're doing this whole thing, and like I was really upset about it when it first happened, because I was like, oh man, like I get it, but it is really different to like always like when you're women, you always go into the bathroom together. Like I'd always have my wife there with me, and then it's like
Yeah.
now you just go in separate. It really is all different, so it definitely is an experience, and it's still something I learn every day. But yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think it just gives me a unique perspective, and I have found some decent cis men who will talk, and I don't normally use the word cis. I'm just using it in this text, but um I have found some that will and are able to a little bit engage in feelings and may talk about that, but it is a difficult thing to navigate, because I'm just more of an open person in general. And I think because I was socialized as a female, that I'm like that. So that definitely is like interesting territory.
No, I like that story because you're saying a lot of things that are making me like, I've never considered that. Like you almost got kicked out of a women's space. And it's like, well, that's just part of what comes with the territory is like,
Yeah,
I don't know, it seems like a new rite of passage in this new
yeah, definitely.
experience. You know what I mean? That's kind of like, it's not all great, but it is what it is. And just what you were saying earlier about like fitting in with the men and like, kind of like reintroducing yourself to that situation for the first time. For me, it's just, I think that people need to understand these are all human experiences. And even though there's unique ones to your experience, for me, I feel like I've gone through that my whole life. Like growing up, was more comfortable with the boys. The girls saw me as a threat when I was younger. They were super mean to me. They were always trying, just maybe where I lived. And so I felt really comfortable with men. And then in the last few years, as I've grown into myself, like once I hit my mid 30s, I found that I didn't really want male friendships. And I found that I started to really love and understand women. And a part of that had to do with changes that was happening in me, learning to love myself and to be more open with women, which was really hard for me, get over my own traumas. And so I feel like these things just change over time in general, as we change. But yeah, it's funny to hear those stories though. Let me think. Let's go into a couple things that are going on right now just to touch on it because I'm curious what your thoughts are. I do read your Instagram and kind of see but you have this way of being so balanced and non-confrontational. That's one of the reasons I'm drawn to you, is that I don't feel like you're out there angry. And I'm not saying you aren't angry about things, but you definitely aren't putting that out into the world above all. So you said earlier that you started, well, first let's go to your wake up experience in 2020. What was it for you? I ask everyone this, that first got you to see different? Because I was a super liberal too, until 2020 when my world got rocked. So what woke you up specifically?
Okay, so I mean, I could definitely say it was when COVID happened.
Yeah.
And even when it first happened, I was still like, gotta mask up, gotta clean everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so crazy. I mean, I'll
Me
tell
too.
you, like I grew up most of my life, like I said, I was a woke leftist. I watched CNN like constantly. That was my news channel, CNN. That's what I watched. And so when 2020 happened, and it wasn't necessarily COVID. So what happened is I started to see differences in the news. So I actually started. It was funny because my wife was the first one to say it, but she was like, "Maybe we should just start watching Fox News just like once in a while. Just let's just see
Just
what they
try. It's
say,
like trying a
you
little bit
know?"
of drugs, like just a little
Yeah,
weed.
like let's just try a little bit. And so we started to, and there were times we couldn't make it through it because we were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe the stuff they're saying." Like, and some stuff is crazy to me, like
Yeah.
on both sides of the end. But I really started to see differences in the way they were presenting the same news story. And, I was noticing some were either blatantly, like, I was just noticing definitely like different stories, sometimes completely different stories coming out, completely different headlines. And then I'm noticing some leaving stuff out, some covering the truth. And I'm just like, what is going on? So, really, that was my start was like, why is there's this discrepancy in the media. Like that was my first big wake up, and I was like, why is there all this polarization? So that was then when I really started to start to do my research behind everything coming out. So like even now, I hate to live in this world, but like me, I'm that person that doesn't trust the source. Like I'm reading 30 articles
Yeah.
to just get a general broad because it's just I feel like now it's just come to a point where certain ones are kind of pushing their own agenda and like yeah there's some truth to some of it but it's hard and so a lot I started to see a lot of differences obviously with what's going on with COVID. And then there was a lot of the trans stuff that started coming in where I started seeing, oh, Fox is covering all this transgender stuff and why isn't CNN covering it, and kind of was like they were sweeping stuff under the rug, and then the children transitioning, and then there was like people like they're not that's not happening, and I'm like, well, I know that's happening. Jazz Jennings, like who doesn't know about that show? So like I mean,
What's the show?
and then oh, like I Am Jazz.
Mm.
Oh, it was a show. I didn't actually watch the entire show, but it's a show about a transgender girl who transitions at a young age.
Oh,
So
okay.
her name is
I didn't know about
yeah,
this.
her name is Jazz Jennings, and
Okay.
she's actually very well known in the community. But she was on puberty blockers. She had she took hormones at a young age. She had surgery at 17. She had complications and stuff. It's a very interesting story. I think people should look into it because
Okay.
she was a televised person who had you know who transitioned as a child and has had complications from that and is still not fully happy with her life. She did a recent interview and said that she still doesn't feel at peace or happy. And
Okay.
that's sad for me, because her parents started socially transitioning her like very young, like at like two
Mm.
years old.
Wow.
Um so yeah, it was just like I said, I started to see all these discrepancies with the news and especially with the children transitioning, and that was like a huge thing for me. And I was like, why are we talking about this? Like, I was like, why is this even being talked about? Like, it was just so weird to me. 'Cause I was like, okay, what if there is like some because statistically, right? Statistically, transsexual people are very rare. Like we are 0.05% of the world population. And what we're seeing today, it seems like everybody's trans, but that's not true. And so I was seeing that trend of like trendy trans is kind of what I called it. It just started to become trendy, and I was like, what's going on? So I really just started doing my research on everything, on puberty blockers, on medically transitioning children. Like, where is it happening? Is it happening? What age is it happening? And I started to look into all this stuff, and then I was like, wow. I was like, I couldn't believe what was happening, and the fact that I was like so blinded to it for so long. Honestly, I was kind of like down on myself about it. I was like, why didn't I wake up sooner? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, once I started to see all that and started to see the facts for myself, and to read medical journals and articles, and just to get knowledgeable about it, because I was like, this seems concerning to me. Like I went through complications. I still deal with complications and have to be on medicine to this day. I don't see how this can be safe for a child, you know. Nor do I personally understand how a child really knows if they have gender dysphoria if they don't go through the long puberty. Like to me, it's I just don't understand how that's possible, you know. And like I said, like maybe there is a possibility. Like obviously, growing up, I must have been a trans kid because I'm a transsexual now. So I can't say that they don't exist, but not in these waves that are happening today. So, but I don't think that we should be medically intervening with them, and that's something too. Is like I say, transition is a cure all, and it's not the solution for everybody. Some people are actually able to manage their gender dysphoria through long term therapy, like lifetime therapy. And they still present as the gender that they would like to be. They're able to do that. And actually, let's say they're a very masculine woman and they are a transsexual man. There are some people who medically cannot transition. They may have medical issues that prevent them from taking hormones. So that's always a possibility. And then there are people who I do know of who have been able to combat it through living though as a man per se, but they go through therapy in order to not have to do anything with their body,
Yeah.
you know. So there are other possibilities, and like my biggest thing to everybody is just kind of like slow down, you know, like slow down and really think about what you're doing, because it is a life altering decision. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that should just be thrown around the way it is. So like I said, to me it was just biggest discrepancies with the news really, and then I really just started to dig in and do my own research, and then I was like, well, okay, there's part of the truth in each of these, and
Hmm.
you know, and that was really my wake up, was just like, I don't really believe either radical news network at this point. And you know, I was just kind of like, I really just wanted to find the truth about everything at that point, because I was like, you know, what do I not know, what am I being fed, you know, as opposed to. So yeah, that's definitely when
Yeah.
my awakening began. And then like I said, when I really started fully speaking out was about 8 months ago, was
What
when I
spurred
really
it?
started
Was
being
there a
vocal.
specific story that jumped out, or was it just seeing it everywhere? Like, what was it that got your heart to be like, all right, it's time?
So it's actually right, a couple of months before I started speaking out. It was actually, I'm a part of quite a few Facebook groups for transsexual men, right? And so there was, I don't remember specifically what happened, but Buck Angel got brought up, and I knew of Buck Angel in my mind, like I knew who he was, um, and I knew he was a transsexual man. And there were some comments going around in the group, and they were saying he was transphobic. And so in my brain, I'm going, how can a transsexual man be transphobic? Like, I'm like, it didn't make sense. And they're like, oh no, like he's saying all this stuff. So honestly, I went to Buck's channel. I went to Buck's YouTube channel, and I started watching a bunch of stuff. My wife can attest, because I would be watching videos, and I would run into the room, and I would be like, I don't understand why everybody thinks he's transphobic. Like I literally agree with everything he says. And so I started watching a lot of his videos, and then I found Blair White, and I found quite a few other people who were speaking out about this stuff, and people that were calling, you know, these people that were calling these people transphobic. And I was like, what? I just didn't get it, you know. And that really was my awakening. I started doing watching his videos and being like, wait, like, he isn't transphobic. So then I really started to, like, everything that was coming out of the transgender community, I started to rethink and be like, wait, so you're calling J.K. Rowling transphobic, but she's really just speaking out for women's rights? Like, and
Yeah.
I just kept like having all these moments of just being like, okay, wait, you're calling this other person transphobic? It was just like, it just got really, confusing and weird to me. And so I just did my research and I was like, yeah, like this doesn't make sense. And I was like, what is this weird narrative like being pushed? And like I said, this community that preaches diversity and inclusion, we love everybody, and yet they're like, okay, but we hate you for speaking out against this. We all have to fall in line with the same agenda. It got very like, I hate to use that word, but cult like,
Yeah.
that the community got very cult like, and it was like, if you don't all think and agree with everything we say, then it's cancel. We want to cancel you, or we're sending everybody against you. Like whatever. And it's just, it got crazy, and I was like, for speaking the truth, though, I just,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
It's been really hard to understand because I've been like all up in the LGBT community forever, like the culture and everything. Like the majority of my friends at one time were a lot from the community. And it was like for me, gay marriage was like, all right, like finally, there's no more weird shit that's like prohibiting women, like lesbian couple, from being in the hospital together. Should one of them, you know what I mean? Like that needed to happen a long time ago. And it was like after that, it was funny too, because someone told me at the time, they're like, now that this is done, they're gonna go for something bigger. And I remember thinking at the time, like, no, like it's not gonna, they're just like, no, these organizations don't just stop. They need a cause. So it's almost like, I don't know if these organizations like Human Right Campaign or other ones, and I know it's a mixture of coming from a lot of places. I don't know if it was almost like we need to stay relevant, so they started creating problems and then indoctrinating kids to think that they have a problem. Like, you're not born in this year, you're born in 1950. Really, and
Right.
America's the worst history alive. And I'm like, wait, what is going on? And then seeing, it's almost like you didn't know this culture was happening. At least I didn't, up until the point that it was like so in our face. And then you see all these kids that have been indoctrinated. I don't know if it's TikTok, I don't know if it's the schools, if it's a combination, but now all of a sudden, they're saying transgenocide. And so that's the hard thing for me, is like, I'm concerned for many reasons. So obviously, like, some of the stuff we see is social media, and I try not to let myself be like, every video I see with a drag queen means that's everything. So we have to remain objective in those moments. But the stuff in the schools, certain things are clearly happening to a point where it's causing harm, it's causing damage in the medical field and all of this. So these pushback that we're seeing in states, I'm noticing some of it's good and necessary, but it wouldn't have had to happen if it was never taken this far. But I'm also seeing some states are taking it a little too far. And so it seems like this whole angst that the community seems to have, that they're just like everybody hates them, is becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're now pushing pushback legislation. They're now pushing actual transphobia with people who have never met a trans person. Like, I'm seeing it for the first time that I can remember, like in my life, like true transphobia. I'm hearing people on the right say things that are deeply disturbing to me. And I'm trying to fight it where I can. And I'm trying to bring in nuance. But yeah, what's your thoughts on some of the laws that are going down, and then also the response on the right, like as far as a self-fulfilling prophecy? Does that concern you, that it's just like ramping up this extreme misunderstanding and polarization?
Yes, I mean, I definitely do. I think that like the genocide thing really bothers me, because a lot of the stuff that people are saying in regards to that is because we don't want kids to medically transition. That's, we're trying to erase trans people. No, I'm voicing safety concerns in those regards. Certain things in those regards. If I want to bring back safekeeping laws, I want people to have therapy. I want people to have to jump through some hoops before they can transition. That's not transgenocide. That's safety. It's just safety for adults, safety for anybody that's being sucked into this ideology.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm sorry, bring that back to where you were at.
Yeah, like as far as So I'm glad you brought like you went into the transgender side. That's kind of the argument we're seeing right now. And we're seeing it a lot this week because of what just happened, which we can discuss briefly. But it's this whole idea that these laws are meaning that we want all kids, like they were erasing transgender people. And then you have these fucking idiots like that dude at CPAC who stood up and said we need to eradicate transgenderism. So of course he's pushing the same fear because I don't even know why he was allowed on that stage, to be honest. I was so furious. But the point is, it's
No, I know what
obviously,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say, I got where you were going. So, yes, I do think that there is an extreme polarization happening with that. I obviously think that some of these laws that are being passed, and that's another thing. We keep seeing a lot of stuff, or some people might see stuff going across social media saying there's all these anti-trans laws being passed. No, they're being proposed. Okay, yes, some have passed laws, but most are just proposed laws. Doesn't mean that they're going to happen or be passed. A lot of these bills are targeted towards children transitioning,
Right.
which I think I don't agree with children transitioning. So I'm okay with that. Now, the ones that are going above, at the age of 26, like these type of things, personally, I mean, I understand the argument between the age of 26 with the brain development. I get it. I understand the argument. However, if you can serve our country at 18 and you're considered an adult, I think you can do what you want. So I think when we're going past the age of 18, that's a different story. Adults should be able to do what they want, but I do think that children shouldn't be able to transition. So I'm fully in support of those bills. But as for certain figures on the far right that are throwing out things like we said we need to eradicate trans people altogether, obviously I think that's ridiculous. I'm one myself, so I can't sit here and say that I would be in support of that by any means. And I do feel that some of it is possibly just being projected as a huge polarization. And you said something earlier, which was saying that you're really starting to see true transphobia like nowadays, like in today's culture, and that is true. Like we, especially like early when I transitioned, it was a really good time. There was none of this going on. It was really nice, and now we are actually seeing like people that literally do have those feelings of like wanting to eradicate trans people and wanting to get rid of us, so to speak. And obviously I think that is too extreme. And there are people, we have existed for a very long time, there are people who have existed for a very long time, but we are a small percentage. And it's not about actually transsexual people. It's about this gender ideology movement that is being pushed by whomever is pushing it, whether it be the left or whoever is pushing the agenda. It's this thing that everybody is trans, like now it's okay, we lump everything non-binary, everything under this trans umbrella. And I just, I personally sometimes don't like that because I feel like you're hijacking like a mental illness that I have to have that label because it's trendy or it's cool right now. And I always say like this is the like I can speak to this from my experience. So as like growing up, since we're the same age, so how there have been like the trends in medical care, right? So there have been trends where I think it was like the 80s and the 90s where every kid had ADHD, right? That was the new drug that was out. It was like every kid that went to the doctor was like, you have ADHD. No, you didn't, but maybe you did. And then in the 2000s there was a bipolar craze, and the reason why I know this is because that's when I went to the mental hospital and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Come to find out 15 years later, I never had bipolar disorder. And so my therapist had told me, she said that was a bipolar craze. She said they were literally every kid that came in
Really?
was that was yeah, because it was a new thing that came out that wasn't a new disorder, but it was just like the craze of that disorder at that time. And she's like, yes, there were a lot of people who were misdiagnosed who may have just had really bad anxiety, depression. Like I had certain things, but I didn't have extreme highs, extreme lows that bipolar displays. So I know because I was diagnosed with that during that craze, and then to come to find out years later that I didn't even have it. So to me, I feel like this is just another something that big pharma jumped on, honestly, to say, okay, let's make as much money as possible, which I think is really funny because like I said, I was a leftist for a while. The left was very much against big pharma, and I feel like big pharma, as the corporation they are, said, "What can we do to get
Mm.
the left to support us?" And they
Yep.
said, "Let's jump on, transing children or trans care for children, and let's also push it for adults and make it easier to get, and we can make all this money." And I really do think that that's a huge proponent, and a lot of this is big pharma.
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
yeah, huge.
No, that makes a lot of sense that I never thought about that either as far as targeting the left with this, but because of the LGBT element of it. But it's like, I just don't understand how we don't all have the kids in common when it comes to this topic. Like, this isn't partisan to me.
No, it should be, and I totally agree. That's what bothers me the most about this, because I'm like, and honestly, people I talk to day to day, like if I actually can sit down with somebody to talk to them and actually talk, they get it.
Yeah.
Even if they are on the left, like they'll be like, oh, like another story I could tell you about my wife. So I started doing this activism, like I said, 8 months ago, and she knew I was doing it, but speaking out against the community. But she wasn't really like, she knew I was doing it, but she wasn't really paying attention, right? And so I would start bringing up stuff and being like, this is happening, right? And she'd be like, that's not happening. Like, no way that that's happening. And I'm like, no, that's happening. And I would show her the proof, and she was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is really happening. Like, I can't believe it. So I think a lot of people just aren't aware. Like, a lot of people are
Yeah.
just going through their day to day, not aware of what's actually going on. And like I said, most people are rational people. When I sit down with them, they're like, yes, I agree. The kids thing shouldn't be,
Yeah.
like they might say, I heard what the left was saying and I see what they want to push it. But then when I sit down with them and I say, okay, but look at all the things that could happen, look at obviously the horrible side effects of Lupron, which is a puberty blocker, um, you know, medically transitioning children in general. Where's the child's rights in that? There's just so much to it that I was just like, I sit down with people and talk to them, and they come out of that conversation and they're like, wow, I
That's
don't think
true. I
children
think
should transition.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I was on I don't know, I follow this account All Sides or whatever, and they present the left, the right, and the center media, and they just present it without, I mean, I guess there's slight bias in the people who are willing to watch it a little more on the right, but I think that's normal. But I've educated in the comments before about this issue, and I'll get people DMing me who are, leftists who are just like, show me that. I haven't heard of that. And then when I show them, they're like, I didn't know that. And then all of a sudden they take a step back. I feel like it is one of those issues that, like you said, we can actually make some change. The first thing I usually get from the dismissive people is, oh, well, the detransitioner is such a low amount, which is frustrating because
Yeah,
one child is too many.
yeah,
And I go back to the COVID logic of shutting down the entire country. Everyone's business is destroyed, livelihoods destroyed, suicide rates up, all of this stuff. No funerals, over less than 1%. So it's like this idea that now we're in the situation, oh, it's not that many kids. First of all, how many detransitioners are going and reporting it to a medical facility? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
probably not a lot. I know there was
yeah.
I don't know if you've been on the Reddit group. It was
The
40,000.
D transport.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know. Like 6 months ago, it was like 40,000 members. It's probably grown quite a bit by then, but
yeah. I think the
yeah,
last, I think somebody checked it. I knew recently is close to 50,000 now.
yeah, I
But
mean, those are just the ones there.
I can tell you, when I started speaking up about all this about 8 months, 8 to 9 months ago, it was almost a year ago total. That Reddit board was only around 22,000.
Oh, really? Oh, that gives
Yeah,
me chills, like in a bad way. It's just so sad.
but
No,
I think that that's important because it
yeah,
shows that it shows that this is trendy. That statistically in the past, and I know the left will use this argument that maybe there's more trans people because it's more accepting. Okay, I get that argument to an extent, but it's not gonna show for the huge
no,
difference we're seeing in the things happening right now. And right now, like in this political climate, it's it's not necessarily cool to be, I mean, not to be a level-headed base trans person. Like, it's not cool to do that. So it's kind of like some of the most polarizing times right now. So
yeah.
yeah, it's just
No, reading the stories, it's absolutely heartbreaking because of the love and acceptance that immediately happens. And then so many of these kids just like immediately dropped by their friends because now you're going against the political narrative, which is why I hate that everything's politicized. You and I talked a little bit about your politics stance, and I think we kind of relate on the feeling of not having a home. So I found myself with the home on the right, and I dove in so deep that I actually found all of the dark places on the right, as far as like I saw the beauty in the people and I saw the things that I agree with, but then I also did see those things that are true, that are spoken of, just that exist on both sides. But I'm glad to understand both landscapes. And now I feel similar, like I'm kind of politically homeless. Like I feel like my goal and my hope is for us to understand that we're mostly the same and we just need to have real conversations. And if we could remove all politics, it would be amazing, but that's not what they want us in. So what's your political space, the best way you could describe?
Yeah, I mean, right now I consider myself politically homeless. Like I said, I grew up as a woke, well, no, I grew up as a Christian conservative, so I actually know a lot about that. And then I veered off and then spent most of my life as a liberal. Um, and so I always say, like, I pretty much literally fall right in the middle. And I say maybe I'm like one step to the left. But
Yeah.
I've kind of like I've always been, even as a liberal, I had conservative morals on certain issues. Like I could tell you abortion was something an issue that was very conservative on, still as a liberal. So there were still certain things that I have always been conservative on. I did, while diving in and doing my research on articles on the right and stuff, I as well saw the extremes of both ends. I think of all political parties, there's extreme radicalism inside all political parties, or ideology, religion, all of that. We've seen that, and so I think unfortunately that's what's getting the best of the news right now is the two extremes. Because, like I said, when I talk to regular day-to-day people, most people are right in the middle. They're middle ground. Most people feel
Yeah.
politically homeless. Most people are like, I can't stand either side of it right now because it's just so extreme.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I honestly, I'll actually, it's funny, the last local election that we had, it was a split ticket for me. And that's the first time in my life because I actually voted on the issues. I
I love
normally used
that.
to vote straight Democratic. And my wife and I actually sat down and read about all the candidates and read about certain issues. And especially when it came to the schools, because I don't agree with the gender ideology being taught in the schools. So I wanted to make sure that we had good people in here doing the job. So, this was the first time I actually voted on the issues, and that's how everybody should vote. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that isn't how everybody votes. A lot of people do vote a straight ticket, and so I mean that's something that I feel like a lot of people are starting to do now. A lot of people are really starting to like actually vote on the issues as opposed to being a straight ticket at this point because they're starting to see. Like I said, I already said like I feel like the parties need to be redefined at this point because the radicalism is just showing too much, and like so now everybody assumes that if you're a leftist, you're in line with the leftist radicalism, and that's not necessarily true. Same with the right. So that's why I said there's so many people I feel like in this middle ground, and that's part of why I speak out and to bring back what you said earlier, why I try not to be combative.
Yeah.
That's actually it was actually a compliment for me because that's something I try not to do. I
Yeah.
don't want to be combative. I don't want to attack people. I just want to speak from my experience and how I see things, and because being we see from both extremes what fighting and being combative does. It just
Yeah.
causes more divisiveness. And I'm trying to bridge that middle ground with people and to find, because really that is where mostly everybody sits right now. Everybody I talk to is just like I said, there's so many people I just tell them what's going on and constantly like you've said, that's not going on, and then I show them and then they take a step back like, oh, and then next thing I know, I'm getting a couple text messages like, I've been looking into this some more, and I'm like, well, this is pretty crazy. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's you can't always believe what you're being told about certain people or anything like that anymore. You really have to be cognizant of what is possibly being fed to you and stuff. And it's funny, my wife and I just watched I don't know if you watched the series on Netflix, Dead to Me, with Christina Applegate by chance.
Mm-mm, not yet.
So we just finished it, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but we just finished it. But of course, there are a couple like just little. Now that we're both like awake, we notice those little woke like words or like woke comments that come into movies and stuff, where they're just you're
Yeah.
just watching like a Netflix show nowadays, and we both like just look at each other and we just give each other that look like,
Oh, big
oh
time.
really?
Oh,
Like
are you
why?
kidding?
Yeah,
That was the hardest. I couldn't watch TV. Okay, after I woke up in 2020, I couldn't watch TV for almost 2 years because I was like the agendas that I was totally aware of. I think I was just like, yeah, right on before. I was like loving it because it was all
yeah,
like, I was like, yeah, everyone's oppressed and like, let's whatever. And now that I see it for what it is, I'm just like, I couldn't watch TV at all because it made me so sad because I was still dealing with losing friends for speaking out. All of that stuff. So the TV felt like it was assaulting me, like even watching SNL, just making fun of people like me. And now I step into this minority space and then I voted for Trump. And now all of a sudden I'm homophobic, I'm a deplorable Nazi and all this shit. And I'm like, what? From people who knew me my whole life. And so watching them laugh at me just hurt so much too, because I was just like, you guys are getting it so wrong and you're just pushing so much hate. But now I'm finally back to it, and I'm to the point where I can compartmentalize, and my boyfriend and I will do the same thing. We just laugh about it. But I like binged a million little things, and I'm like, they should call it a million little woke agendas, because I'm like, they have covered every possible thing and it's always the worst case scenario, and I'm just like, geez, it's like, really, you guys? Like, I don't know, it's frustrating. But as far as
it
what
is
you're saying,
frustrating
it is.
for
It's like
sure.
there's no
Yeah,
representation. Like, and I told my friend once, he was my best friend was saying something, we were talking about TV, and he's like, I'm so glad there's representation for Black people on TV now. And I was like, Christopher, like, where is the representation for conservatives? Just show me. Where is it on TV where they're not hillbilly asshole dummies, like racist, all of this? And he was like, thought about it for a minute. I was like, that's a really good point. I'm like, exactly.
yeah,
There,
it is.
there's half. If let's say it's half the country has zero representation. I guess they had
Yeah,
Roseanne, which got canceled. It's like,
yeah,
so
and like you said,
anyway.
and now most of it is like a lot of the leftist extreme that's coming out of the media, because a lot of the celebrities are are Democrats or leftists. That just happens to be true. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I said, it's just crazy. Like it was funny because we watched a documentary just the other day, and it was about like fake news in the media, right? But it was we watched it and it was great. It was an eye-opening thing, but it was left-leaning, and it was obvious
Yeah.
because they just like attacked the right the whole time. And I was like, yeah, but there's stuff wrong with the right media too. And I was so mad because I thought it was like an unbiased one, but it wasn't.
What
And
is
you
it?
don't
Does
know until you're
bias
like
even
halfway
exist?
through. Well, I don't know,
I crave it so much. Like, I just like want to live in a world where the news is actually unbiased. Like, how beautiful would it be? But you know what? On the flip side of that, as much as it sucks to live in this like ridiculous, I call it a matrix place, like it just feels like everything is bullshit that you see on TV and even online with all of these influencers. Like, they're all bullshit too, in my opinion. Like, but the one good thing that's happening is discernment. Like, when I look back over the last 3 years, it has been like the biggest training ground into my soul, as far as really going deep and facing fears, finding courage, becoming in the center of the spotlight when that's not what I always wanted to just like blend and kind of fit in, and then realizing that like someone has to speak, someone has to. So it's forced me to face every single thing within myself, and then the discernment and looking at it all. And like you said earlier, you like to read 30 articles because somewhere in there you can put together the truth. And it's like, I feel like we're all like growing up in our mental capacity because, let's be honest, Americans, we're not the the smartest of all the countries. Our school system, we have it pretty easy. We're all about bread and circus. We're more about sports and paying attention to what's going on in the news until 2020. And a lot of us had to grow up literally and start to exercise parts of our brain that we weren't adept at using. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. Like, as much as it was a devastating time for society and for people to go through, because obviously many lives were lost during that, it's still, I always said, even when it was happening, what is going to be the social impact of this? What is going to
Yeah.
be the impact of this years down the line? Because, like I said, we were forced to be in our houses. We were forced to not be able to, like you said, go to funerals, to even see people in the hospital. I mean, there was just so many restrictions, and I even noticed, like, even after lockdowns, came back up, yeah, after we were able to start going out and stuff, and like going to concerts and stuff, like it was just awkward. People were awkward. Like, one of my wife and our favorite things to do is to go to concerts. We love music,
Yeah.
and we went to one, and it was just so people did. It was like people did not know how to act anymore, and it was just so weird, to see society like so affected by what had happened. And like I said, it was like the media in some way capitalized on that.
Mhm.
Like, I capitalized on COVID happening to polarize the agendas like even more, I feel like, because it's
Yeah.
just gotten worse since then.
Absolutely. Well, and then I think that right now we're in a humbling phase, and I just have so much faith in humanity because I know that there is a pattern and a rhythm to nature and to everything. And I think that we don't, like, for whether we chose to come during this time or not, like, we are, whether we're in the upswing or the downswing or the crash or the whatever, this is the flow of everything. We can't escape it, so we might as well embrace the time that we're here. And I feel lucky to be here during this time. It's definitely not boring. It's difficult, but I have faith in humanity because I feel like with everything we've gone through right now, we're in a humbling experience. And I'm noticing on the left and the right, a lot of people who are, super, whether it was against Trump or against a certain thing, like now they're experiencing the flip side of the coin and they're getting to like live with that a little bit. And we all are. And I think a lot of us are finding humility. People who were very judgmental during COVID to people who maybe didn't get the shot or whatever are now seeing some of the studies coming out. I know me, I was motivated by a different kind of fear, like, oh my god, they're going to take everything from us, which is, yeah, I could, like, part of that's real, but I was over the top. And I am looking back and thinking, wow, you really pushed hard on your friends. You were really you were pushing a lot of fear, thinking you were trying to save them. So like I have humble moments with that and coming back and being like, okay, I learned from that. I'm not going to do that again. Like with anything, force my way in. So I feel like it just kind of levels out. And this whole trans stuff, with the trend nature of it, I feel like it's going to be something we're going to laugh about 10, 15, not laugh about the children, but the trend of the non-binary, and all of a sudden I change my gender every 5 minutes. Like I feel like someday we're going to look back on it. We're gonna be like, remember when we did that as a society? It's going to be like the PC of the 90s. Like we're just going to think
Yeah.
it was so ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's going to be like the goth or like emo phase where
Yes,
they're going to
it's
be
so
like, remember, remember
yes.
that trans phase we all went through? Like, how
Remember
crazy
when we
was
were
that?
all non-binary? That was so much fun. Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Let's, before we wrap up, let's talk about the shooter situation. My thoughts, I'll just say right now, I was listening to a Twitter space about it, and I really like the Mario's Twitter space. It's like one of the bigger ones that like Elon's been on and stuff. They touch all kinds of topics, and I like that they kind of get to the bottom of things. And someone brought up, because I've seen all these memes that are like, oh my God, this is a trend. All of a sudden, you're getting trans non-binary people shooting schools. Well, they actually did the math, and the percentage per population is exactly the same. So it's like zero point 0 something percent of, and they broke it down mathematically, so it's not like, you know what I'm saying. I'm not finishing
Yes.
my thought right, but it's not saying the percentage of shooters, it's saying the percentage compared to the amount of trans people to non-trans compared to the amount of non-trans people. It's exactly the same. So there is no more spike in trans people shooting up. That's what the media does when there's numbers, just like there's a train derailment. They're like, oh my God, trains are derailing everywhere. And then you look it up and you're like, this is super common. They're just throwing it in your face right now. So I just want to bring that up really quickly, that there's not a huge spike in this. That's fear
No,
porn.
there's not.
So
Yeah.
what is your take?
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree. this is not like a huge uptick. I appreciate that one because I actually haven't seen that math there, but I know somebody did like the breakdown because the vast majority of school shootings are actually white men, or statistically are white
Yeah.
men. So if you were to average out the the full of school shootings, it's like I think white men are 10 times more likely to commit that than a transgender person. So it is like you said, it's just the media likes to do that with the numbers and make it seem like it's like this certain thing that's happening. Um, but obviously, I'm devastated, obviously, for the victims of what happened in this tragedy. I don't. Um, I am not that person who's going to sit here and defend the shooter in any way. I personally like the trans aspect of it all. We don't really have the full story. I feel like because for me, when it first came out, when I saw the story first break, it was a transgender woman was the original stories that were being reported, and then it was a transgender man, and then the next day like everybody was trying to stay away from the pronouns. It seemed like, and then so I'm not trying to say that this shooter wasn't trans, but I'm just saying like it was just very confusing in the way that it was being reported, and I honestly just think it's devastating what happened because, especially it being a Christian school, I just feel like I knew immediately when I saw the story, like I was devastated for the victims, but I also knew immediately how polarized this would become because of the way in which this happened in the in the respective like columns of transit and like the Christian, with nothing against either of them, I just knew it would be polarized, and as we're seeing that's happened, but the to me, it just like I said, I've already been arguing with people on social media today about it, and like, a lot of the people are saying like, oh, like you said, there's a huge spike in why is there a huge spike in transgender people doing this, and like this is like a huge, and I'm like, no, like commonly this isn't a huge spike in that, and my thing is like it doesn't people don't go and out and like commit murder or school shootings just because they're trans. It's not like I said, transsexual is a thing that I am. It is not like my whole being. It's not like it's not going to cause me to go out and commit crimes. There's something more going on, with that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So I hate the fact that it's being so polarized to be, this red flag laws to make sure no trans people can own guns and like all this stuff, like because that's just ridiculous. It's not.
Yeah.
It isn't about that. But I do want to say though that obviously this does show that we already know a gender ideology movement is in effect, that there is a push for that agenda. And for any agenda or ideology, there's always extreme radicalism that comes out of that. And so I don't know if that's what's happening, but to me, it seems like maybe this is some extreme radicalism coming out of the gender movement, and it's very scary because it's, I think that when we start to turn to violence and extreme radicalism, that you are going to have that hard pushback, and for major reason is it, that hard pushback. Like I said, it's extreme, but I understand it because you know it makes sense because I know people are upset and whatever, but like I always try to say, like, don't blame it on the fact that they're trans. This person probably had deep seated mental health issues,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to do with the fact that they were trans. Like, there were other things having to do with this, and we won't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if the manifesto was released or if they're even going to do that, but I heard there was one. I don't know the whole story behind it, but I just, I wish that the whole trans thing would be taken out of it. Like I said,
Yeah.
it could be like, why does that even have to be a thing at this point? This was somebody who committed a horrendous thing, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, but was also killed in the process of that. So it's like at this point, why even bring that up? Like it's just a.
Yeah.
I feel like the trans thing. This is my biggest irritation with this because I feel like because of the trans label and because that's even being thrown in there, we're not talking about the real issue anymore. We're not talking about the safety of the children. We're not talking about gun laws. We're not talking about anything to try to make a solution for the actual school shootings. Now it's just turned into eradicate transgenders, don't allow them to have guns, like they're all mentally ill, all this stuff. And it's just becoming this extreme polarization. And, that's, like I said, you can't sit there and blame it on that person being transgender. That's not it. It's not like I said, I think I made a post, it was either earlier today or yesterday, but I said, like, I'm trans and I have never once thought to go pick up a gun and go murder people. That's not something I just think to do. It's something that obviously this person was festering with and dealing with, and it's not okay. But like I said, it just shows the mental health crisis in this country, for one. That's something I
Yeah.
consistently talk about, is that there's a huge mental health crisis in this country, and these kids aren't getting the help that they need.
Absolutely. No, and I think you worded that really beautifully, because it's a complexity. There is complexity because it highlights some of the rhetoric that is coming out of the cult, which would be they're committing a genocide. They want us dead, which, to indoctrinated people, the next step would be, but we don't know that has anything to do with this situation. Also, just the floating around of that day of vengeance in DC is not helpful. And we wouldn't even have known about that if it weren't for the situation. But the point is, it is complex, but people do this thing where they push all their anger, their fear in a direction. They need someone to blame. And now this is the community that's targeted. And I fully agree with you. Removing it entirely from the head, you're seeing the hypocrisy. I feel like you get to see right, left hypocrisy just ping pong back and forth. So for so long, everyone on the right is like, why would they say white straight man shot these people? Like, keep that out of the articles. And now they're like, you guys need to say it was a transgender, put that in the headline. And I'm like, okay, so you're all the same. Like, it's you want to use it to make a point, and it's a tragedy. And that's the really hard thing that I see every time that this happens. And I'm not saying we're not all susceptible to those emotions, but when these things happen, that's why I sat back for a few days and literally was just kind of like thinking about it and paying attention to it. And it's just horrific in general. Even the people who jump on the immediate conspiracy stuff, because there are false flags and they're going down those rabbit holes. I think it's really important that we think about how we respond to tragedy, that we become so desensitized to it that we almost look at all these things as though it's just as seen on TV. And it's just heartbreaking in general. And I wish our country did not use every single bad thing that happened as an opportunity to prove themselves right. But here we are.
No, I could not have said that better.
It's hard. We're losing our humanity. And it's just, I think that we need to maintain our sense of humanity towards one another and towards these situations, and fuck being right in these types of moments. But no, I've really enjoyed having you on. I think that I want to thank you for speaking out, because just because you're trans does not mean that you are obliged to be the spokesperson for anything. And so,
oh no, and I'll tell you right off the bat, I did not want this. I wanted to just transition and move on with my life. This was not something I intended to do. Like, yes, did I always have like a helping nature, and did I plan to help out in society in some way? Yes. But like I said, it was when the children came up, for me, that I was just like, I really have to speak up about this, and I don't care how much hate I get about it. I just don't care, because like you said, we're losing our humanity in all of this. And I think you do a very good job of this as well. And it's just like, I just want to bring back the humanity back, and like the level headedness, and like the common ground and the middle ground. And like, we don't have to agree, but we can sit down and have conversations, because that's how we find solutions. The reason why we're not finding any solutions in this country right now is because we're constantly fighting.
And we're not having these nuanced discussions. And that's why I thank you, because it's more powerful coming from you who has experience. And it's sad to me that you are new to an experience of feeling finally the relief that you were seeking. And then all of a sudden you've become a vocal person who's going to get hate from the very community that, was supportive of you. And I know that's not easy and it takes courage, but I love that you're embracing it and that you're fully in for the kids, because that's the best that we can do. And it does mean more coming from your experience. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience? So I saw that you guys have something coming up Friday. There's a panel you're going to be on. Is that right?
Yeah. So Friday, at 6,
I think it's Pacific.
It is Pacific, 6
6
Pacific. I'm in
p.m.
Eastern, so I get confused. But yeah, 6 Pacific time. I'm going to be on a panel. We actually have been in the works of starting a new organization with
Really?
transsexuals. Yes. So we are starting a new organization, and that's going to be us talking about it. Um, but we have some of us have come together and decided to unify. The group is actually called Transsexual Unity, and so we have decided to come together and talk about these issues because we do feel that transsexuals specifically who are willing to speak out about this, our voices are truly important in this fight against gender ideology because we are trans, and to have trans people speak out against it is very
Yeah.
effective. And we want people to see that most of us are just normal people. We aren't these radical extremes that you're seeing on TV. You know, we are just normal, everyday people who just want to live our lives. And so we want to, talk about, obviously, we talk about being against medical transition of children, stopping the indoctrination of children, but also showing that real transsexuals exist and that we have positive experiences in this world. Because we don't feel like there is a group that is really bringing open discussion, and that's actually what we're planning to do, to find middle ground and to bring open discussion to all of these issues. And that is what the Twitter space on Friday is going to be all about. It's actually going to be mostly a Q&A. We are going to talk about our mission and what we plan to do, but it's mostly going to be a Q&A, and all questions are welcomed. We are not, all the people in my organization are not people who are offended by questions, even if it's that question that people always told you don't ask a trans person. Like, this is a space. If you want to ask that question, you can go ahead. But I will make it known it will be an absolutely no hate allowed space. So you can come in, you can push back on us and be controversial. Well, please, no out full,
Yeah.
ragefulness or hatefulness. You will be kicked out of the group. But we do open. We want people to come push back on us. We want people to ask us questions. We want people to talk about the hard issues because people aren't talking about that. And we think
Where
that
is
we
this?
could hopefully.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I
Well,
was
I was
saying
just going to say,
we're hoping that we can bring the middle ground to everybody, and just
yeah.
like I said, so people have an open place to come and ask questions, so they can see that we're not threatening and that we're here to answer those questions, and that we want to bring back, just normalize, not necessarily normalize, but just show that true transsexuals exist. We are a small percent of the population, but here we are, and most of us are against all of this stuff that you see on the left. Honestly, most of us are sensible, and we know that the kids is like, why is this even an issue? That to most
Yeah.
of us, it's not a thing. So, yeah, but that's going to be happening. So everybody's welcome, and if you have any questions, you can bring them there because we will be there.
I love that so much. And where is this taking place? What platform?
It's a Twitter. So it'll be a Twitter space.
Good. Twitter spaces are my
Yep.
favorite.
Yep.
So it's on Twitter space, and then I'll share your handle below and the handle of some of the other panelists, maybe, so people can know where to find that space. Go ahead and follow you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually going to be held on Buck Angels
Oh,
on
perfect.
his Twitter. Yeah. We're just holding it on his because he has a bigger following, so we're going to be able to get more people, more engagement, because we want to bring the engagement. Eventually, we'll start holding them. We do have our own Twitter. We just started it, though. Like I said, we're very early stages
I
of
had no idea this was
getting.
happening. Like, it's so right that you guys are starting a whole organization. This is so exciting. Like, as much as like this stuff's going crazy, this wouldn't have happened. This unifying, because being such a small part of the population, to have this unifying thing come of this diversity or this difficulty is actually really beautiful. I joined in this like right cult for a while, and I specifically, it was like this one kind of woman in this 50,000 person community, and a lot of us ended up defecting from it because we realized like it wasn't really what we thought. But it's like what blossomed out of that was this family that is just growing and growing of people who have this unique experience. And I'm like looking back on it, I'm grateful that adversity brought us together. And I feel like just look at all the goods that's going to come. And I'm grateful that you guys are starting this. Like, it's so needed. It's so powerful in general. Wish it was here all along, but I can't wait. And we're seeing like Gays Against Groomers, and like, we need more of this, more positive, open discussion platforms where people can really ask questions. I love it.
Well, yeah, and like I said, that was our main goal. And through all of this, we are a small percentage of the transsexual or transgender population that actually is speaking out about speaking out against this stuff.
But you're
Um,
making it
how
okay for others to start to do the same.
Yes, because I was going to say, however, as much as it seems like we're the minority, I really don't think we are. I think
No.
most, like I said, I have a lot of people that slide into my DMs that say thank you, but I'm not willing to speak out about this. So I know that there are more people who feel this way and are just scared of what the left is going to do to them. They're scared of the hate that they're going to get. They're scared of getting canceled. And we just, like I said, want to bring a very normal thing and show people that there are a group of us and there are people like us, and we will be inviting more people to join eventually, through a vetting process. We're going to be, like I said, we're building super slow because we want to do it right, but we just wanted to come together because we feel like it's really important right now to allow, because like I said, nobody's really having that space for open discussion and allowing, for people to push back, ask questions, and to actually talk and hopefully find solutions with all these major issues that are happening, in the world today.
I'm so excited. I can't wait. This is beautiful. Is there anything that you would like to share, a parting message for the listeners, before we wrap?
I guess I would say I hope that in sharing my story, you have learned a little bit more about transsexual people or a transsexual person. That please don't believe every single thing you read in the media, and please just do your own research. Most of us really are, transsexuals really just want to be the opposite sex that they were not born as, and they want to just move on with their life. Most of us aren't trying to, you know, as a ruse on TikTok, or most of us just want to integrate back into society and live our lives. You know, but like I said, I think that through all of this will come a lot more positivity and middle ground in the future. I also have hope for humanity, and I hope that through my story that people will understand more about who we really are, and that we aren't this just extreme that you're seeing in the media, that we are real people with real experiences that have real disorders, that have chosen our own paths on how we're going to deal with those. And I also want to thank you for doing the work that you're doing. I love your podcast and I love the work you're doing, because I think you are also a voice right now in the middle ground that's just so much needed. Every time I listen, I'm like, it's just so great, because like you're kind of like the shining the light in the dark right now, and there's just not enough of that. There's not
Thank
enough
you.
people. Yeah, so I
Ah,
appreciate it.
that means everything to me. We're all family. We're in this together, and I'm grateful for, like, I wouldn't have found all these incredible human beings with such courage. So it's worth it. But thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna link below all of your stuff where they can find you on Instagram, Twitter, everything. Everyone join in Friday. I'm gonna have this out before then, 6 p.m. Pacific. Ask your questions, follow all the panelists. I can't wait for it. And thank you again for being so open and willing to share your experience with us.
Absolutely.
All right, bye.